Hello, this is the Craft House Magic series of tutorials. Today I'm going to show you how to join squares onto the first of your squares of your Cosy Memories blanket. If you want a tutorial of how to make this square, you can follow the links to my part 1 of this series. So, in order to create the same pattern as I've got here, where all the centre double decreases are aligned, I'd need to pick up stitches along this edge and cast stitches on here, or if I was going to add to this side, I'd cast on stitches here and then pick up stitches along this side. So first of all, I'm going to show you how to pick up stitches along the left hand side of this square. So I pop my needle in the very end point where we've cast off this square to pick up a stitch. I get my yarn and I'm just going to pull through a stitch. There we go, so that's the first one picked up. Just make sure that I've got the right end so that I don't end up picking up stitches with the short end of the yarn. So then I'm going to look at the side of my square and I'm going to pick up the little purl bumps just to the back side of this edge, just because it makes it easier to pick up the stitch. So I'm going to go all the way along the side of the square and pick up a purl bump for each row of stitches that you've made on the square that you're picking up stitches from. I've now picked up 24 stitches along this edge. So if you do pick up one stitch from each row, you should end up with 24 stitches. So now we need to cast on 25 stitches along this edge to make a total of 49 stitches. So there are various cast on methods that you can use, but I really like a nice stretchy cast on, similar to the long tail that I use to cast on for this square. However, because we've just got one end and not a long tail, as in 2 threads, we can't do that cast on. But we can use the slip knot cast on. So to do the slip knot cast on, I hold the yarn in my hand and run the yarn over my thumb to form a loop where it crosses over. I put the needle through the loop and scoop the yarn from underneath. I pull the loop close to these stitches. If you don't get that close enough, you'll end up with very, very loose stitches, and then pull this end while holding the stitch, and then that creates a stitch. So you want to do 25 cast on stitches just now in the same way in total. Now I have 24 stitches picked up and 25 cast on stitches using the same slip knot cast on method. So using these 49 stitches, I can follow the same procedure as I used for part 1 of the tutorial series to create a square like this one. So here I've done a few rows of the square that I'd started, and you can see that the cast on edge is nice and stretchy, similar to that of the long cast on that I'd showed you in the previous tutorial. There can be some little pointy edges sticking out, but with blocking that disappears. And also, if you're going to be picking at stitches up around the edge of the blanket and doing an I-cord bind off, that'll all disappear. So if you then wanted to join a square above this one, all you'd need to do is cast on 25 stitches using the same slip knot cast on as you did here, then pick up 24 stitches along this edge, and that would be the same method of doing the square as all these others. If you then had 3 squares together with the lines facing all the same direction in the centre double decrease, you'd have an edge here and an edge here. All you'd need to do is pick up 24 stitches here, one in the corner where it joins at the diagonal, and 24 stitches along here. So that's nice and simple. So then you'd end up with a blanket with the centre double decrease lines going in one direction. You can, however, do a more complicated layout. So here we have all the centre double decreases going in the same direction, but you can have a more complicated setup where you have the lines pointing towards the middle, like as if it's a star, but you'd have to make sure that you do them in a sort of correct order. For example, so if you've done these 4 centre squares and then you join one here and one here, you couldn't then do this one because it needs to you need to do this square before this square. So you just have to think it out a little bit carefully because of the where you're picking up stitches, the corner where you then meet once you've picked up one line is where your centre double decrease line is going to begin. You can also do a layout that looks like an arrow, which is a lot easier than this. So if you want something sort of in the middle, that would be a good layout. So it's best to do the simple layout and get into the swing of things first. So in my blanket, what I've tried to do in most of the squares is to do an alternate dark and light colours. So I've got light, 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 dark, 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 dark. They're not all exactly light and dark, but it just gives me a nice spread of light and dark colours rather than having patches of lights and darks together. So one tip I have is to make sure you sew your ends in for every square that you knit, just so that you don't have to sew those ends in all at the end. So thanks for watching. I hope you get started on your memories blanket soon. See you in the next tutorial. Bye!